Right.
Right.
Oh, I have to take these out so I don't hear my echo. So what's important to you about people knowing more or correct information in if they don't have any information? How do you speak to those people who don't even have the basic understanding that
You're assuming I'm talking to people who have no understanding. I'm assuming I am.
I don't disagree. The assumptions are on both sides and probably incorrect, except in the middle, right? In the middle, there's the balance, right?
I think anybody can take the information that I'm saying and learn something about who God is, because it's just information about who God is. You know, it's, you don't have to know anything to find out something,
Right.
Right. So it's just.
So people knowing about who God is, like somebody who has no, like our friend who has
This
no
is my
idea.
husband, Trey. He's a great guy. He's smart. He's witty. He's vision oriented. I could tell people a lot of things about you, and that might make them go, huh, he sounds like a great guy. I might want to know him.
Right. So the paradigm of the words you were reading earlier, right? Very pomp, words full of pomp, very majestic. How do they even reference that? Have a reference point for that in today's.
Had I continued, had I finished my sentence,
oh, okay,
before the rebuttal hit,
okay,
I would have given the application of how people can take that information about the Lord and, number one, use it to know him and understand him, and then understand that when we are filled with his Holy Spirit, we also get to participate in those things with him: counsel and might, wisdom.
So somebody who has no idea about that, right? And yes, I know I'm interrupting you, but I get the gist of what you're saying. Isn't it helpful to tell people, here's what you're going to do, then give them the verses, then give them the definition?
If I were a man, yes, I would make my point and then tell them why I've made the point. But I'm a woman, so I use my words and make my point at the end. That is why women make better writers than men.
Is that why it is? Okay.
At least mystery novels. Men give too much away at the beginning, and then I'm always like, yep. Saw that, knew that, yep. Agatha Christie, I never get to the end before she does.
So God foreshadowed the end quite a bit, kind of like Chris Nolan in Memento.
There you go. Yeah. He told it in reverse. He really did. He told it in reverse. And then he did it.
Right. But for somebody, I think there are more people out there who are going to have either very watered down understandings or no understanding or not even aware this exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus those who are interested in knowing more and have a reasonable education in it.
Right. I have trouble talking to people and relating to people that have no information on this subject.
Right. And that's where I think conversing from a standpoint of here's the bigger picture understanding, like the woman would do. Mm-hmm. And then the details intermixed, as they come. Because, you called that format of opening thesis, verse, information, and closing the way a man does it. And I'm like, that's also the way the education system does it, right? I mean, maybe it's because of the patriarchy, but anyway, it is kind of like that's the way they do it, right?
I'm just thinking conversationally. Conversationally, I have found in speaking with women that we tend to, if we're not giving a linear story, we give you all of the details to be able to give you the build up to understand the point we're getting to. I have to give you all the information first so you can understand when we finally get to make our point. We can't give you our point and you're going, what does that mean? And then we have to like go, well, if you'd shut up, I tell you.
Yeah, I definitely have experienced that with others.
See, I will take away explaining to my husband, he's not that funny.
The concept, though, for how we do what we do, right? I think that's important. I think it sets a framework for saying, hey, are we still in the same vein?
Of course, we're going to go down this path of the thing you want to talk about and have been wanting to talk about for a month. Okay. All right, framework. Let's go down the framework path.
I'm trying to find a better one, and you're not giving me a better one. You're giving me my framework. I mean, you're it doesn't.
I'm just relating to you.
Okay, so are you okay? Do you care what framework we use as far as that
I don't
goes?
care.
Okay, so if I lead you down a path where you get to tell people simplified versions of complicated things regarding who God is,
I'm not good at simple, but we'll see. We'll see.
you are, and you do word pictures really well, so I have no doubt. So yes, I want to start with Adam and Eve because we almost had we had a really good conversation. I wish I had recorded it because the timeliness of it, people just don't understand who God really is. They understand the version they've gotten from culture, not necessarily even from Christians. It's the culture's versions of Christians that they watched on TV that say, oh, that's how Christians are. It's like, you didn't even interact with anybody real here. This is all made up stuff, but you're deciding that's what it is. Or they're reading the Bible and saying, oh my God, this guy's
Crazy.
horrible. What are you doing? And it's like, you're not reading it in context. Or they're getting the traditions of the church that say you must do these things.
That's the big one. That's the big one.
That's the thing that
traditions of men.
Yeah, and people look at that and they're like, I don't do that. And I don't either. That's not cool. Now there's when things change in who you are as a person, those things become easier to do and make. Some of the things you say, okay, yeah, I should go to church. I should be part of a community. I should be, giving and all those kind of things. And that just comes with the change, but it's not from a perspective of, I don't want to give anybody anything to, you want me to give people, you want me to have to give that and more? Well, I don't see that makes sense at all. So I'm not going to do it. But if you go through the process of the change that he does in you, when you get there and you're giving your stuff away for not even thinking about it, you're like, I couldn't have done that from the other side. So I feel like there's obviously an awakening. We've seen that in the spirit. People are really more interested in spiritual things now.
Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're interested in a Christian point of view on spiritual. It just, there is a movement in the spirit in the world right now. And some people are picking up the Yahweh point of view, and some people are picking up a very different point of view. And I will not say they all lead to the same place, but they all lead to spiritual awakening.
Right.
And, which path you choose to go down in that is.
It seems to me, if you just break it simply in half, if you believe there's a spiritual world, you'll find God. If you don't believe there's a spiritual world, you definitely won't.
If you do not believe there's a spiritual world, you definitely will not find God. I will not say that if you believe there's a spiritual world, you will find God. I do not agree with that statement.
So let me finish. I didn't finish it until I just realized what there is to that. You will find God, and you'll have to make a decision. Are you going to follow him or you're not going to follow him? And and there's those who will say we did, the goats and sheep, right? But they will find God. They'll find the actual God, and because they're seeking for that. And if they get all the information, they will get that. But then they have to decide if it's the God of their making or if it's actually God. Is that not?
I'm going to politely disagree with
Oh,
that,
no,
with that
do it.
point
Do
of
it.
view.
Yeah.
I just, I don't think that everyone who recognizes that there is a spiritual realm finds the one true God.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that there are a lot of little g gods out there that distract and take
Mm-hmm.
attention away. And I mean, I've got one friend in mind who is very steeped in energy healing and that side of spirituality. That is not God.
Right.
That is little g. That is spirit realm for sure, but it's not big
I don't want to
G's.
just say it's not God because all is God, but that's a deeper conversation
You
than
want to
this.
talk simply,
Yeah,
so we can
so
talk simply.
yes. So yes, that is not God. And so I'm fine with
And
that.
she may never find Yahweh.
And maybe being spiritually awakened doesn't make you a seeker. You
You're
might be,
seeking
yeah,
something,
you're
but you may
well,
not be seeking God.
you're
You're seeking enlightenment, is what I find. Most
yeah,
people who are seeking spiritually are seeking some
yeah,
source of enlightenment.
yeah.
And there's light and there's enlightenment, not the same thing.
I just think
Always, not
it
always.
seems that there's a big possibility that the believers in who God is, or that God exists,
Mm-hmm.
the unbelievers in that have they just built for destruction, that as the Bible says, right? In the realm of the others, there's a lot of room for God to work and make places and
He can do anything he wants, So yeah, I'm not going to discount him using anything to bring someone to
yeah. And
himself.
I didn't really mean to go down that rabbit hole. I
Yeah,
really just
you
meant to.
really love a rabbit hole.
I do. I just realized that I wanted to define that the people who do not believe there is a God and are not awakened spiritually, that I have nothing to say to them, right? About
Unless they're curious and they're wanting to see how the
at that
how
point,
the cuckoos talk.
at that point, they have to give up the idea that there isn't a God
Oh, sure. No, they don't.
well, they have to go search.
No, they don't. No, they don't. You want to listen to old people yapping and think, let's go watch the crazy people talk. Then hey, more power to you.
Maybe. But the people who are seeking don't, in this culture and time, don't have any real foundational, very little, if any, foundational understanding of why we're even here, who God is, what the planet, what is this all about? Are we in a simulation? Are we in an alien planet simulation? Is this, are we all just in the mind of God? All of those things, they all can potentially exist, but there is truth. There are things that can be discussed and hammered out for eons and never be done, right?
You're going to try and
And
hit them all.
no, I'm not. I'm going to limit myself to things that actually have value and matter. But my point being is there's a foundational understanding. There's a story to tell, right? John Bevere did that one, starting from the beginning and going through, and he just did it really fast. But there's a story to tell, and people don't have the story, and they can get it from different places like Bible Project, and there are people who are doing things to help, but I think there are missing parts that I can add and you can add, and that's going to be fun doing. So, Adam and Eve. We were talking about it the other day. Do you remember this? Do you remember us talking about it?
We have talked about it several times. I don't remember which conversation you're talking
So
about.
one of the ones I do remember was like in C.S. Lewis's Paralandra, where
Which I haven't listened to yet.
I know it's not important that you do, but he fashions this world with this woman whose king has gone away and she's by herself, and this avatar of the evil one comes in and says, "Oh, you can live on these parts of the land, but you can't live on this part." She goes, "No," and he goes, "Well, can you visit them and just not stay there?" And she's like, "I don't know." And she then talks about you. I'm aging. What is it? No, there's a word he uses for it, but it's the growing, aging, it by the moments as I'm having these conversations, right? And then there's another character who's named Ransom, and he's playing kind of the common sense, the Jiminy Cricket, of to this conversation, and he's saying, you know, if the king didn't want you to go over there to live, why do you think he would want you to visit? Wouldn't he be protecting you by not doing that? And the other guy's like, "Oh, but you don't understand. In our world, we do these things all the time, and we go and have this fun, and we do that." And she goes, "Well, it might be interesting to see what happened." And so she goes over, and then she's, gets concerned about getting back before sleep time, because you're not supposed to be over there, when you sleep. That's somehow they've defined through this conversation. So there's just a series of conversations that tempt her to learn, right? She has a single.
They're breaking down barriers.
Yeah. And there's
it's testing her boundaries and breaking down the barriers of the boundaries.
Right. And there's a single, what's the word? Rule. Don't live over, or don't sleep over on this thing. I think it was don't sleep or don't live over on this part of the land. But every conversation was well,
what about
what
this?
is the, and he would, and there would be words like, well, you would be proud. And she goes, "What is proud?" And then he explains to her, and she goes, he says, "Proud is being happy with who you are, and appreciating all the things you can do." And she goes, "Well, that sounds okay." And I mean, it just goes through like that, right? And it's like, we don't think of it as, years of conversation leading.
Right. The Bible doesn't indicate in the story of Adam and Eve how long the tempting took. We just look at it as the serpent showed up one day and asked Eve some questions, and she just decided, "Hey, that looks good,"
Yeah.
Which brings me to another point, that it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
Evil did not tempt her. Good did.
Mm-hmm.
It was pleasing to the eyes. It looked yummy to eat, and it would give her the wisdom of God. That is the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life, mentioned in the book of James. It was not the evil that got her. It was the good. And I believe, given that mankind was not supposed to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we were not supposed to know good as opposed to evil. We were only to know good as in God is good.
Like when he said he would be proud, and she goes, "What is proud?"
Yeah.
They had no idea.
Right.
They didn't have that word,
right,
or a meaning assigned to
right.
it.
We were only supposed to know God as the goodness in our lives. We weren't supposed to know comparison. And I believe that comparison is the root of pride. Satan looked at God, compared himself to God, and said, "I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to elevate myself above him. I'm going to do it better, because I'm going to make, the angels greater than these stupid humans who are, not as good as angels. They're not as smart. They're not as strong. They're you know,
And see, there's a whole
there's
story
nothing
there.
compared to, you
There's a
know,
whole story there to just that character.
yeah, you know, but
So comparison leads to pride.
I believe so. Yeah.
What else does it lead to?
I,
Envy, jealousy.
yes, so much, so much. And that tree being the knowledge of good and evil, you've got the verses, you know, this versus that right there. And that is the understanding of comparative thinking.
Right.
And that's a whole can of worms that God never intended us to know. Can you imagine a life without comparison?
I can imagine areas of my life that I don't compare at all. And yeah, it's very freeing to not have to think about it, the stress of where do I fit, you know.
Yeah.
And there are other areas of my life where I do operate in comparison.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, everybody has it someplace in their life.
well, every man meets each other, gives their name, and what do you do?
Dick swinging.
And what do you do? You know, because that's how we open it. You know, that's how we get to know each other. What do we do?
Women in modern times take a look at each other and how are you aging? How thin are you? You know.
Yeah. What kind of clothes you wearing? How do they fit?
What kind of bag you have? You know.
But
all the
whether somebody
stuff.
has a sports car or not, don't compare at all. I mean, I can like it and not like it just equally. So, but so if we introduce compare, man, that's like foundational.
I know.
That is really, because you can't go below that.
Nope. Good and evil.
I think C.S. Lewis knew that because that's because
he took a lot
talking. They would say words, and she's like, "What does that mean?" You know, and it's like, and so they're defining. And the other dude is, I just remember the Ransom is defining it too. He's saying, "No, it's not that. It's this, this, and this."
Yeah.
And so she's having to compare.
She's having to compare.
And in some cases, she did compare towards Ransom, and in some cases, she
has to compare. And then she gets to decide which one applies to herself.
And which
so it becomes self-moderating instead of God moderating.
Wow. Yeah.
You know. Chew on that one.
Yeah, that's a long, God bless. There's so many trails on that. But so no rabbit holes. So let's go.
I've discussed everything I want to discuss. Tape. No.
There was where's Adam? what happened to Adam?
Yeah.
No, that's another rabbit hole. Sorry, that's not what I'm trying to do. Okay. So the storyline, God, before outside of time, established things to be what they were. Then he took a planet and created over a couple of days, periods of time.
Yes, thank you.
This planet.
Days weren't invented until daybreak.
Right. So this planet that we live on, right? For what purpose?
Companionship. Community. His image being put into the physical realm.
Is it like Sims?
Yes.
I mean, you basically make people and then tell them, you kind of move them around and meet their needs and that kind of thing. And I'm sure there's people who have companionship with their Sims. Written extra backstory.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, we have a whole lot more autonomy than someone playing Sims.
But the Matrix, the machines created the Matrix for power, right? Because everyone was human batteries.
Yeah.
So their motivation wasn't for companionship; it was for the continuation of their machine species.
Right. Now, scripture tells us that we were created to be image bearers. And scripture also tells us that Jesus was the visible version of the invisible God. And so humanity, you have to look at humanity from that same point of view as image bearers were to manifest God's presence in the earth.
Right.
And like him. And, I have some varying thoughts on that, but
that's we'll detail that out later. He created us as image bearers to be in relationship with, and we open in the Garden of Eden with God talking to Adam and Eve and having, he's had conversation with them, and it's a regular thing that he shows up to say, hey, in the afternoon.
Yeah. You really ought to.
Sorry. Not to mute my mic, right? I won't do that next time.
Yeah, it was their standard to spend time together. In this garden he made for them to control and care for. They were,
and he's playing he's playing, not to diminish any part of God, but he's playing a role in a play he wrote.
I suppose you can look at it that way.
I mean, he's in the garden scene with Adam and Eve, playing, and you can imagine a play being written with all the scenery and the dialogue, and somebody's playing God, So in that sense, it's kind of like, it'd be interesting to see how else that could play out, but not now. Just thinking about it because it's real. Could be. All right. So he told him, don't eat the tree. Don't eat of the tree. There were other trees.
You have all the other fruit in the garden, all the other leafy plants and trees and vegetables, and
and sheep will come up and give you a flank to work on.
No, they did not eat meat yet. The garden was vegetarian. Sorry, y'all, it was.
Right.
And that's like saying, don't ever notice white cars.
It's also like saying, if you jump out of an airplane at 30,000 feet without a parachute, you're probably going to die. So don't do that.
Right. But
it's not that unusual when you put it in that kind of parameters,
yeah,
right?
And he did mean they'd physically die eventually, but he also meant that their innocence would die.
Well, he meant too that the relationship would change, would be a big difference in relationship. And so
the life as they knew it would end.
And the versus comparison thing, in the end, God proves out he has better offerings, and people should have chose that, and everyone will agree that that's the case.
Yeah. Me and Eve are going to have a talk.
He said, I made the verses, I made the comparison, and I let it be, you choose, and I let you choose the rest of your life. If you want to go do what I originally made you to do, or do you want to fumble your way through this and and hope you get on the bus? That's seems like the choice. But how do you? It's quite a paradox to have free will that you created. So if I say that I'm for God, right? And I say I have free will, but he created that. So am I making that choice? People.
That's, to me, that's the paradox of a God who is both outside of time and inside of time.
Right.
inside of time, he allows our free will.
Mhm.
Outside of time, he already knows the beginning from the end. He knows who has chosen him and who has not. So he knows that some people have been created for destruction.
Right.
Some people, he knows who chooses him.
There is an inside and an outside.
Yes.
Outside that he is in is not restricted with time
Right.
or any
Right.
of those things.
Right. And so, because he's omnipotent, it's a paradox,
Mhm.
because we in our finite minds don't really grasp omnipotence.
But he set the rules in place early on so that anyone who wanted to follow him could,
Yeah.
and anyone who wanted to modify and edit them could also.
Right.
So it's not like we didn't know after, once Adam and Eve made that decision. I don't know that it's kind of hard to hold them responsible because they didn't know, they didn't have the comparison to choose.
Yeah. They only knew God's goodness.
Yeah. And that's, I think that in the end, that's what I was talking about with the Paralandra and the lady. In the end, this was the guy's.
Are you going to spoil the book for me right now?
No, because you already know the story. In the end, the summation was she thought she was doing good.
Mm.
Her,
Yeah.
and it just lines up with what you're talking about, because that was, it was, he had so convinced her over time that this is what the king would want, that it made sense when then, that go ahead and eat it because this is good. This will help him relate with you better.
You know what he knows.
Exactly. And so anyway, it's a good telling of the story, right? In an allegory, if you like those things.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was, I never had a narrative of the garden and that whole experience. Who, act 1, 2, and 3, what of just that experience.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of cool.
So now tell people what the series of books you're talking about and who the author is.
Oh, C.S. Lewis. The first one, Out of the Silent Planet, then Paralandra. That Hideous Strength. That's the third one.
Very good.
That's hard. Paralandra is the one that has that story in it. You can read each one individually, it doesn't matter. Read them all three, and there are characters that go through it. But C.S. Lewis is a great writer. I mean, he really knows how to tell a story. But back to the subject. So Adam and Eve now realize they have choices and are conscious of it and responsible for them. So God knew the relationship would happen that way, yet he made them for relationship. Why make that happen?
Because he'd slain the lamb before the beginning of the foundations of the earth. So he had to do it. He had to carry through. He had to carry on because, it's always been that way.
Stories written.
Yeah.
The characters are not developed. Yeah. Scripts are written.
Yeah.
Their dialogue, their descriptions, everything is all already written. I don't disagree with that. And it's kind of funny too. Will Ferrell did that movie where he was the character in that lady's novel, and he kept hearing the voiceover of what he was doing. He's like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And it's
like, no.
We got to go back and watch that, because in that whole thing, he's like, wait, I'm going to die. and the voiceover is like, he then realized he was going to die. He's like, no. And I'm thinking, okay, God's the author. God has the voiceover narrative. We're the people. And we're like, how do we have this conversation? How do we deal with these things? How do we do all of this? And it just blows my mind. I lost my thought there for a minute.
Oh my gosh, you're so funny.
This whole thing. I mean, it's just it's crazy because it's true. And if you don't believe it's true, then you'll think it's crazy and you won't do it.
And you'll be right. Now, you'll be right. It is crazy. But go ahead and do it because it's fun.
Exactly. That's what's so weird, right?
Yeah. You're crazy if you do, you're crazy if you don't.
So he wrote the script, he set everything in motion, he put it into a capsule of time that we live in. And
while in the capsule of time, we're writing our own story through our free will.
for us, yes.
Yes.
We do.
In time.
We have to do whatever was written and those characters did, but
or
not
is it
knowing.
or is it the other way around? It's all a big loop. This is what I keep talking about. It's that infinity sign is true. It's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, we are in time. We are living our
Determine
story.
whether you're going to live the story he wrote or you're going to live your own story.
Outside of time, it's all the same story.
Listen, my conscious mind, I'm free will. I can write my own story, right? I connect to God. I'm connecting to his book he wrote out there outside of time that already has my story in it. And I'm just living that story.
Well, yeah, because you're connected to the writer.
Right.
You're connected to
Exactly.
the author.
Exactly.
When you're not connected to the author, you're still living the story that's written
you
outside of time.
you just don't believe it.
Just, yeah.
But once you connect with the author, then it's like, oh, okay.
Now I can tune into what it's
I don't have to decide
like.
what to do. I can just do what I'm
told to do.
made to do.
Yeah.
See, that's where people get thrown off
you're
too.
created to do.
Being told to do or made to do, you know, or created to do is better because made can go either way. Isn't that weird? Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, created to do.
Created to do. And that, you know, it's fundamentally a decision everybody has to make before they get the outcomes, you know, that God made them to be and created them to do and be. Man, that is a lot. But
nothing.
You're silly.
I think it's you.
Probably is me. Probably is me. Oh, I was going to tell you. Yeah. Okay. So gummies, THC, pot, hemp, and alcohol were made by God for us. You know, they were meant for us. At least the hemp, right?
It's a plant.
So they were made for us to release inhibitions for relationship with him, so that for that period of time we have a closer, less inhibited relationship, communication with him than when we're not.
In the garden, that wasn't necessary. We were in complete, unfiltered communication with him.
But it wasn't necessary because it was there. But now we're not there. And this is the...
I'm going to say people don't listen to him.
But everyone...
Because you don't know... You don't know what spirit realm you're going to tap into.
I was definitely going to agree with that people are already having spiritual experiences with those items. And I mean, even in alcohol, right? You releases your inhibitions. You're more open to suggestion, and maybe you can hear God say things that you couldn't hear easily otherwise. Is it good to be drunk all the time? No.
I personally,
So find a way to be that way without it, but don't demonize it.
I am not going to demonize it.
Uh-huh.
You be you.
Mm-hmm.
You know my thoughts on it, and my thoughts on it are not for public consumption, but you be you.
Even though they are.
What?
Gummies and
Gummies?
beers.
Oh, yeah, gummies and beers are for public consumption. Whatever. I don't care.
Your
You
thoughts
know,
are not for public consumption.
my thoughts are not for public consumption on that, because I'm not going to lead someone on a license side or on a legalism side.
Fair enough.
So, I am not going to weigh in on that topic.
Fair enough. But are you opening a portal? Are you opening a spiritual portal? Is that a real thing?
I believe, yes, we can open spiritual portals.
Then we can open one with the enemy just as easily as we can with God.
I believe so, yes. And I believe if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're not consciously aware
yes,
of what
don't
you're
try
doing,
this at home.
Exactly. Exactly.
But some people are going to be more in touch that way.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If you are an immature carnal Christian,
Mm-hmm.
do not gummy and ask God to talk to you. I'm just going to say that. And if you aren't sure if you're an immature carnal Christian, you probably are. So, I'm just going to say.
I agree. I agree with all of your disclaimers. I just have to noodle that out sometimes. I'm a pro anyway, so don't worry about it.
You're a what?
I'm a pro.
Oh, my Lord.
I'm pro spiritual. Okay, back to subject. Adam and Eve come out of the garden and they start making babies.
It was the only thing fun left to do. Everything else was hard work.
And God did at some point there give them words that told what the future would hold.
You mean the curses and the consequences? He gave them the consequences of their actions.
Yeah, what was that? We should cover that, because once they get out,
he cursed Satan. He gave consequences to Adam. So he cursed Satan to always be at odds with humanity and to crawl on his belly the rest of his days. Eve got the consequences of wanting to control her husband, but not being able to, and pain in childbirth. And Adam, ground was cursed. Adam was not. And the ground was cursed so that Adam's consequences would be striving and toil and hard work. And that carries on to today.
So what are today comparatives for those curses? Where do we see that?
Well, childbirth still hurts, even though we have medication. But I kind of think it's more in the raising your children is painful.
Mm-hmm.
Raising your children is challenging and hard work, and it's toil. You love your children, but like human beings do, they rebel and they get minds of their own eventually and stop being cute puppies and start pooping on the floor.
And what might they have been without the curse?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea at all. I'm really curious. Side note, I'm really curious. During the millennial kingdom, when Satan is locked up and there's no more deception in the world and humanity is still on earth and Jesus is ruling, are there going to be new babies born? Are those parents going to get to experience what an unsullied child is like? And if I'm alive, can I have one more baby, please, so I can see what that's like?
Yeah.
Because I really want to experience an obedient child, because I have 5 and I haven't, Lucas was the closest thing to an obedient child I got,
Yeah.
but um, I really want to try that on for size. Anyway, side note.
As long as I can help.
Hopefully you do. Hopefully, yes.
I don't want any more immaculate conceptions.
One was enough. No, but yeah, I have no idea what child rearing would be like,
So then the land was not cursed.
The land was
cursed.
But that, basically what man put his hand to for provision
Right.
was always going to be a struggle after that. And that is true today. Men are just taught to be striving, go big or go home, muscle through, I don't know. I'll just insert man metaphor here.
Right.
It's they there's a lot of hard work being a man.
Right.
There's a lot of protection and provision. It's self-sourced, and that is what that the curse of the land brought upon man, was the idea that he was going to be his own protection and provision. And whereas in the garden, God was his protection and provision. In the garden, man and woman were codependent and co-equals, and they were made to work and fit together in perfect unity to benefit and help one another. And the punishment for Eve was wanting to control her husband, and that has played out in every generation since then.
Right.
I don't know a single woman that is perfectly happy with everything her husband does.
Right.
And
except you.
That's true. That's true. Yes, my husband does everything right, and I do not. Honestly, I don't want to control him because I've tried to, and he does not cooperate, and it's really hard. So I gave up a long time ago trying to control Trey King. But I see it in almost every relationship of married people I know.
Yeah.
And some husbands are really glad to be controlled and give up responsibility and relinquish authority. And then women are pissed off that they have all the authority and that they're having to run everything.
Right.
And and it's like, you wanted control.
Right.
You can't be pissed off now that you have it and your husband's not being the man.
Yeah.
Quit swinging your dick, lady. It's like, come on. Sorry, y'all. But I'm not a women's libber. Never find that coming out of me. Women and men were created to be equals and co-regents of a kingdom, but we were made for different purposes, and we were made for different authorities. And
we weren't made to compete.
We were not made to compete. We were not. And there again is one of your comparison things.
Right.
He's trying to boss me around. I can do that as good as he can. Comparison.
Right.
I
can run track as a woman.
Yeah.
I really can't do either.
I could run track if I was speedy.
I can't run track. I'm not a woman. So.
No, you can't. You're more of a tackling kind of guy.
Yeah.
You're a tackle build, not a running build.
Yeah.
Whatever. No, and that's what I still see happening is.
And all those curses, I mean, those were written.
Those were consequences, not curses.
Well, they were consequences that have been written down and known for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And if we don't recognize that they apply now just as much as they applied then, we just have to,
Then you're not looking at it right.
Yeah. And when you understand that, then it's like, okay, we're parts of a plan, a bigger picture of relations, an individual relationship with the creator, but communicating as one unit, doing the things that, we do.
Mm-hmm.
And now we know why the world's going to hell in a handbasket, as they say, because those consequences are being played out.
And so many more, just all of the fallout of an enemy in earth that hates humanity.
Yeah.
Is jealous of and hates us.
Yeah.
And
well, and then think too that if somehow they've convinced people that we can take the planet back to Eden,
yeah,
like that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
And there's nothing written to that effect at all that I've ever seen, much less.
Well, I mean,
it's more of a concept or idea that people would like.
I don't think humanity is going to take the earth back to an Edenic place, but I think the return of Jesus.
Yeah. But the people who believe, we need to,
that we're going to have a utopian society because we all get together and see kumbaya, not going to happen.
And because the world keeps getting worse and worse and worse, through the consequences of the fall. And there are people who say, oh no, we can turn this around.
Yeah.
as the avalanche comes and takes them down.
That's exactly what Hitler thought. Hitler's idea was to purge the earth of the, in his mind, unattractive people. And, blonde hair, blue eyed people were the attractive people. And he was going to, except for he was brown eyed and brown haired. It never made sense to me, but it's like, dude, well, he did. He killed himself.
The attractive people. I'm like, okay, so what?
Yeah, no, I was being hyperbolic. But no, I mean,
he didn't think he could change. He
thought by getting rid of certain types of people that he could bring, a utopian society into play.
Yep.
And, that is the epitome of narcissism, to think that you can facilitate humanity becoming a utopian society. It's like, I'm sorry, you are not that big. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only God can do that. And he will. There is going to be a new heaven and a new earth.
Right.
And God is going to live not in heaven. He's going to live in the earth.
Right.
Humanity.
Right.
He is going to be, the light of the world.
While still being outside of time, potentially.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know that maybe at that point time ends, because there's not going to be.
You can't have eternity without time.
You just are.
You,
but my point is, there's not going to be a sun and a moon and stars.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be Jesus.
Right.
And so time as we know it won't be trackable anymore.
Right. That makes sense.
Although I think I may miss the sunrise. Maybe he'll just put a light show on.
I have a feeling anything that we take pleasure in here is like and
like he said, there's not going to be any more seas.
Like a small flashlight that, you may have 1,000 small flashlights, but when you put the floodlight, all the flashlight beams are gone. You can only see the one. And it's like, you don't even think about where's those little beams. He's like, oh, this is so much better. Yeah. I can see so much better now.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a cool concept.
Yeah.
So they got out of the garden. They got the hold on a second.
There was some cursing that happened, but it was mostly consequences. For people, it was consequences.
I have to remember not to call them curses, consequences. So they go and make babies, and they start to grow as a community of one that build cities connected to each other. They don't, nobody is, I'm assuming that the ziggurat of Nimrod was, and the Tower of Babel was all about everyone is in one place.
Yeah, the scripture says that the people weren't dispersing. They weren't.
Right. They just stayed where they were and just expanded out.
And just got smarter and more, I don't know the word I'm looking for.
Advanced industrially and
yeah, but it's because they're so focused in the one area that all of the energy is going into growing that one area instead of being all spread out and developing different.
Right.
They got to concentrate.
They developed different cultures from the
right.
weather,
yeah, and they
the
didn't,
land
and
or
they weren't
whatever.
all spread out, so that different pockets of people had to evolve in different ways. They were all concentrated, so they all got to hyperdrive, the evolutionary process of intellectual, I can't think.
Technology.
No, it's like my brain has quit working. I don't know why. Mine is probably lack of caffeine, not true.
Throw me under the bus, huh? Damn. So then, because they were all in one place, and became so
intellectual advances. That's what I was looking for.
Advanced intellectually and became what they thought was the pinnacle of success and took credit for all of it.
Yeah.
And God's like, nope, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And so he split them up by languages at the Tower of Babel, and then they all ended up diaspora of sorts.
They dispersed.
And then everybody got to where they are.
Right.
But primarily it was in the Middle East area of the world.
Yes. And let's go back to Cain and Abel. Cain was cursed with a mark, so that when people saw him.
You are not putting that out there.
Why not? It makes so much sense.
No.
These are Middle East.
Okay, people. I don't disagree. Okay. However, it could be construed as a racial situation that doesn't.
Not, it's against white people. Cut it.
There is no editing.
Sure there is. You can edit.
No, I'm not going to.
All right, whatever.
Go ahead, say your piece. Let God cover you.
I think
crosses in New York.
I think, all right, so we know scientifically that the blue-eyed gene came from one person about 10,000 years ago.
Okay.
I think that person was Cain, and I think that was the mark of Cain. Amongst a plethora of Middle Eastern looking people, got this one blue-eyed dude. Maybe he even had blonde hair. We don't know. But that would stand out. Blue eyes in that. I mean, I know when I go to Mexico, I get looked at like I'm a crazy person because
right.
Central Mexico, not resort towns, but like little Mexican towns.
Yeah.
Right. I stand out because I look very different from, everybody else in town.
Right. And with heels, you're a couple inches taller.
Exactly. So, but that's what I think. I think that blue-eyed gene was Cain.
And somehow he had to figure out how to copulate with some of the native peoples to derive that gene to other parts of it.
He obviously, there's an entire civilization around,
Yeah, I guess there could be people who were like intrigued by the blonde hair, blue eye.
Yeah. Hey, everybody likes a surfer boy.
Right.
And he's a bad boy on top of that. So, he was just Talk about the bait of Satan.
Right? He probably
Yeah.
did make probably create a whole lot of people.
Yeah. There you go. I've explained it for you people.
Oh, I love it.
You're welcome.
Okay. So Tower of Babel,
Yeah.
Curse of Cain. That's what I think you said was. I said Tower of Babel. They dispersed and became the people they were in the Middle East. Oh, and that's where you did the mark. Yes.
No, I mean, because that happened before. That happened way before.
I was just trying to pick up where we were in the picture in the story.
I digressed from a moment.
No, you did a look back. That was
okay. There you go. There you go.
So that everyone's dispersed, and we next hear of Abraham.
Yeah.
And Abraham was.
But the funny thing is, okay, so well, Babylon. Nope, never mind. He came from the original people groups. Babylon, that's where that word comes from. And so he was Babylonian. That's what the Chaldeans were. They were the Babylonians.
So we opened with God finding Abraham in a bush. Or Abraham finds God in a bush.
No, that was Moses that found God in the bush.
No, my bad. Yes. Abraham was the son of Terah.
Yes.
Who was an idol maker for Nimrod, as some scholars would suggest.
It is suggested that he was a priest in a
he's in a priestly role in the kingdom of Nimrod.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Nimrod, then the Babylonian kingdom.
And then there's a apocryphal story of
side note, I was listening to something the other day, and the of Chaldean, that's a title.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In fact, I was watching a movie from the 20s, and they were talking about, it was British military, and they were in the Middle East area, and they were talking about someone being the of Chaldea. And I was like, oh, that's a title. And so anyway.
Maybe.
So somebody investigate that and get back to me. Anyway, so Terah is called out of Babylon.
No, well, there's a nice little story there, apocryphal story of Abraham's birth.
Yes.
You don't like that story? I mean, you don't think it's
stupid.
You don't think it's real?
No, I don't.
Interesting. All right. Well, then we'll move on. Terah gets called out of Babylon.
I mean, this is what we know from the inspired word of God.
I said it was apocryphal.
Get that? And I think the word you're looking for is not apocryphal, because that means
in addition to
apocryphal. That isn't that, doesn't that mean the end?
Yeah, it's in addition to, added to it.
What is the apocalypse? Is that apocryphal, apocalypse? Those are the same word? No? Okay, never mind.
I think so. No, because, well,
an apocryphal book is an end time book.
Why don't you just look it up? I'll look it up and see. Because I'm pretty sure the Catholics
it's extra biblical.
Have extra biblical, which is called apocryphal.
No, I think apocryphal is end times.
Of a story or statement of doubtful authenticity, although widely circulated as being true.
Okay.
So it is the correct definition.
There you go.
It is an apocryphal story, but I think it's an interesting story.
Is that one in Enoch?
I don't remember if it's in that one or Jubilees.
Because I've read the book of Adam and Eve.
And it may have been part of Heiser's stuff. It might have been part of Heiser's stuff.
I don't remember ever reading that in Heiser's stuff.
All right, well, let me tell it, and you tell me if it's the same one. So Terah is one of the science wise men, spiritual guys
Mhm.
in the kingdom. And there's a shooting star, asteroid, meteorite, whatever they call it. And they divine that the son of Terra is going to dethrone Nimrod. And so he then has to go, he shows up and Nimrod says, give me your son, you know.
And they give him another,
And
they
they give him
some other
another
kid,
baby,
and
and they kills the other baby, and that Abraham grew up in a cave like for the first 9 to 10 years of his life, and so he didn't have the exposure to the culture.
But didn't he live like with Seth? Didn't he live under like a Sethite?
I don't know.
One of the Sethite lines was raising him in the cave. He wasn't in the cave by himself.
No,
Was
he was
protecting him
being
and
raised in
him.
a cave by somebody. I don't remember who it was, but the point being is he didn't get the culture influence.
Right. He didn't get the Babylonian culture. He got the culture of God.
Right. And so then when Terah is called out, he goes with him. They've been in contact the whole time and everything, but Terah is found out, so he has to leave, and God calls him out. And I think you were saying something about Terah's called out, and is it him that had the first opportunity?
Yeah, Terah. I mean, yes, Terah had the first opportunity to walk with God. He was called out with Abraham being his kid and Lot being his nephew. That's who went with him. And he stopped in the Haran area and never went any further. And so he did not obey to completion. He only he gave partial obedience to God. And so you give partial obedience to God long enough, and he's going to say, okay, moving on. And so he changed that focus to Abraham. And so he then called Abraham to finish the journey. Go to the land I'm calling you to, and Abraham obeyed to completion.
Right.
And so Abraham became the father of the generations. And it could have been Terah, but it wasn't.
I jumped too far ahead.
I don't wonder.
I went from Nimrod to Abraham.
Well, that is how it went.
Well, where's Noah?
Noah's after. Oh, I don't know. That's right, because the Babel happened after the flood, didn't it?
No, yeah. it was after the flood.
Yeah, that was the first thing we did that he did after the flood.
I completely missed the
flood. I got locked in Cain and Abel that you skipped over, and so
I did. Oh my!
Yeah.
Holy smokes!
Yeah, we're gonna have to scrap this one and start over.
No. We can just hit the high points.
There's a lot that happened,
but it's not. It's not. It's not absolutely necessary to the narrative.
No, at some point, God got sick of people and flooded it.
Right.
And kept 8.
And then started it over.
Again.
Right. And then we went through the Nimrod and the separation of the languages and all
they were supposed to repopulate the earth, and they didn't. They stayed in that area of Turkey, Middle East,
right.
Iran, Iraq.
And then that's when Nimrod was there at the Tower of Babel. And then in Nimrod's kingdom, in his court, there was Terah, who was the guy we just talked about, who was Abraham's father. He had the chance to go to where God led him, but he stopped in Haran. And then it goes to Abraham at that point.
Yes, we did skip several.
So Abraham had been steeped in who? According
to extra biblical literature, yes. According to the Bible, we don't know.
Right. All right. So it opens with God saying, Abraham, I'm God, go do this. Go leave here.
Leave your family and come on. And his nephew went with him.
And we come to find out, foreshadowing in the story, that Abraham is not had a son for his whole adult life into old age. And there have been a series of heir apparents throughout that time.
Yeah.
Which nobody ever says all of that in one place, which is
right.
It just is so pertinent to the situation.
Yeah. He marries his half sister, and they cannot have any babies. And so, his nephew is the next in line to because the nephew's father is dead.
Right.
And so Abraham takes him on as his, raising him like he's his own child. And did I mention his name is Lot? I don't know if I said that. And so Lot travels with Abraham because Abraham is his father figure.
Right.
His own father is dead. And so he's going with his aunt and uncle and traveling with them as if they were his parents. And you would assume by the culture of the day that was heir.
Right.
And they eventually split ways. And Lot goes his own way, his own life, has his own family, that kind of stuff, and makes choices that for some reason we find out later that Abraham considers his servant to be his only heir.
So Lot has been disinherited, so to speak.
Yeah. And
probably when he moved into Sodom.
Yeah.
From the outskirts of it.
Right. Yeah. He made some unhealthy choices for himself and got himself in a pickle a few times.
Yeah. Ended up in a destruction of a city.
Yeah.
And his wife.
Yeah.
And all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. And so, Abraham was heirless.
And so
God tells him he's going to be the father of many nations.
Right. So he gets on past that, and
which is interesting when you think about it. God told him he's going to be the father of many nations. Well, Israel is one nation. And he can't be many nations unless he had an Ishmael.
Yeah. That's true.
Yep.
Yeah, Ishmael's winning by numbers right now.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I just thought of that.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. So who is Ishmael? Who, Abraham's getting up in years, can't have
his wife can't
seem to have kids. And they decide
to do it in their flesh.
So they know the promise of God.
God has told them you're going to be the father of many nations.
Maybe just got out of touch for a while.
They decided to take things into their own hands, as people do.
But that
God's not doing it in my timing.
But that had to start somewhere, right? Where the first thought of, dang, what's the oldest anybody's ever had a kid? 102? Oh, wow, I'm 99. I don't have much time left, and those thoughts, along with, God said he was going to provide, he didn't say how. So it just makes sense,
This is provision.
Right.
This is man striving and taking provision into their own hands instead of resting in God's plan.
But it was a series of events.
It was God's overarching plan.
Absolutely. But it happened incrementally.
Yeah, for sure.
Like we were talking
Decision
about
making.
The temptation of Eve.
It's human reasoning. It's reasoning it out instead of tuning into the spirit. It's tuning into our own reason.
Right.
And that's dangerous ground.
That is what leads to the secularism and then feeds into the cultural individualism, that whatever I can reason is what's real. And if I agree with what you reason, then we can call that reality. If I don't, then you're crazy.
You're crazy. Yeah.
So he gets with Hagar, has a kid, and then he gets told by some guys, hey, next year you're going to have a baby.
Your wife.
Your wife's going to have a baby.
The-
And did he think, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that with Hagar. He
God
did
already
show
told him
up.
that. God already told him that when he made the covenant. He's like, no, that's not the son of the promise.
Right.
You're going to have your own son of the
Well, he
promise
does
through your
tell him
wife.
that, but when he is, before the kid's born, before Isaac is born, in his mind, Ishmael's the dude.
No,
No?
no.
When did he get, when?
There was a time when he has already had Ishmael and he is out
Okay.
praying with God.
Yeah. I'm not there yet. We're at the birth of Isaac.
Right. This is before the birth of Isaac. This is before the birth of Isaac. So he gets the first promise. You're going to be the father of many nations. And it's not happening. They orchestrate Ishmael. That didn't work out according to Sarah's ideal plan. And so she's like, well, this is not the seed of promise because this is effed up. This went sideways. And so
Is before she had Isaac?
Before she had Isaac. And so Abraham is out there talking to God. I don't know if he's shepherding or whatever. He doesn't seem to be, he's not in a tent. I know this. He's not sleeping in a tent. He's sleeping out in the wild. Basically, he's talking to God, and God says, Ishmael is not the child of promise. I'm going to give your wife a child of promise. And Abraham laughs. So Abraham laughed first. Abraham laughs at him. And, he's like, I'm as old as dirt, and that's just not going to happen. And, and then God does the covenant with him where they walk between the bodies of the carcasses.
Right.
And then later the three angels come, God and the two angels come and tell him this time next year you'll have a baby. And that's when Sarah laughs. But Abraham had already been told that Ishmael was not the son of promise before Isaac was ever born. He already knew that.
And it was after Isaac, though, that they were sent away. That
Ishmael and Hagar were sent away? Yes. That was when I think it was at his weaning party. So he'd have been about 3. And Ishmael would have been about 13, because I think they were about 10 years apart.
And the guys that came and told him that they were going to be pregnant next year were on their way to
Sodom
destroy
and Gomorrah. They were on their way to wipe out Sodom, where Lot lived, with his family.
The idea that Abraham negotiated with God from, what is it, 40 or 50 people down to 5?
From 50 down to 5, and he still didn't get 5.
Yeah. He only got 4.
He only got 4, because none of the future son-in-laws would come with him.
Right.
And then the wife died on the way. And we know what happened after that. And that was icky.
Yeah.
But that was the outcomes for Lot. And we never hear from Lot again. Although we do hear, his
descendants.
His descendants are like the bane of Israel's existence.
Right.
So.
Which shows up later in Jacob and Esau, not Jacob and Esau, but
Saul and Saul having to fight the Ammonites.
Exactly. And that whole, it's just a repeat of the same storyline.
Yeah. Yes, lots of repeating themes in scripture.
So Hagar and Ishmael are gone.
But God tells Abraham and Hagar both that Ishmael will be a great nation of his own, that he will have 12. I think he tells Hagar that he'll have 12 sons. And but he will be
the 24 elders?
No. I don't think so. Only 2 of them are mentioned in the New Testament.
Yeah.
So
Maybe.
I think the other 12 are going to be the apostles and Paul.
Gotcha.
The 11 and Paul.
That could work too. Maybe they trade them out. They rotate.
Matthias, Paul.
Maybe they rotate. You get it this week.
There you go.
Oh, that's hilarious.
There you go. That is not spelled out in scripture.
No. Not even apocryphal. And that's Isaac. Then it's just Isaac and his opening, which is a pretty cool story, but I don't want to do it right now.
To be continued.
Huh?
To be continued.
Right? Can't do the Bible in one episode. That would be crazy.
Oh. Yeah, we skipped a lot.
But the storyline.
We skipped the whole Nephilim.
Well, I figure once you get the basic down, then you can go back and break it down into deeper chunks.
I'm really okay not jumping into the rabbit hole that is, what are the sons of God? Yeah, I'm real happy to skip that one.
What do you say, that my opinions are not for public consumption?
Yeah. I'll get kicked out of church if I start spewing too many opinions.
That's hilarious.
Evangelicals won't have me anyway.
So silly. I'm looking forward to the rest of this. This is fun. But I'm hungry. So, oh, you said that, didn't you?
I did. I said it quiet.
That's awesome. All right, well, I'm going to shut off the recording.